You have heard, he was mad, the swirling skies, a sick man's hand. God moved the brush, and Van Gogh never knew what he was doing. Here is the number, nobody says out loud. His seizures began at 35. He was dead at 37. Most of the canvases you can name were already finished before the first attack. So if the madness did not paint them, what did? By the end you will not need a museum label, and you will not need a guide. You will hold 3 keys, the color, the brushstroke, and the man's own letters. Then you can stand in front of any Van Gogh, the sunflowers on a postcard, the starry night on a mug, and say what the picture actually says, not what he meant. What is there? Start with the picture everyone already carries. A loner, an eccentric, a mad solitary genius whose hand God guided, who never quite knew what he was doing. 3 words get stapled to him, again and again: poor, mad, unrecognized. And after each one you have to add a small mark, a footnote, because not one of the 3 means what you think it means. Take poor first. It is not invented. In his own letters he says it flatly. For a week, sometimes 2, he lives on a cup of coffee and a crust of bread and does nothing but work. So yes, he was poor. But look at why. Every canvas he painted, he shipped to his brother Theo. Theo pushed the work, found buyers, and sent Vincent a monthly wage. Between 150 and 250 francs. One thing was asked in return: paint. Nothing else. On that same money lived a friend of his, Joseph Roulin, the postman. He kept a wife and children on 150 to 200 francs a month, and Roulin never once counted himself poor. So where did Vincent's money go? Into the work, into paint, into canvas, into one idea after another. He was an idealist and a perfectionist. When an idea took hold of him, it took all of him. His painting and the studio of the South, the whole commune of artists he tried to build for everyone but himself. Now the second word, unrecognized. Everyone will tell you he sold exactly 1 painting in his life, the Red Vineyard. It hangs in Moscow today, in the Pushkin State Museum of Fine Arts. But the 1 painting story is wrong. In his letters to Theo he counts others sold while he was alive. Around 14 of them. When the first one went, he wrote the line I keep coming back to. The first little sheep has gone, meaning the rest of the flock would follow. And he was in no hurry to sell. If he liked you simply as a person, you could walk into his studio and leave with the canvas as a gift. If he decided the buyer did not understand the work, he told Theo to keep it from that man. That is not a starving artist. That is a man guarding what he made. Which leaves the last word, mad. In the 1800s, no one could read the mind with any precision. What Vincent was given was a diagnosis of epilepsy. Epilepsy is a disorder of the nerves, not of the mind. Not schizophrenia. Not the madness of the legend. And here the numbers come back. The epilepsy opened when he was 35. He was dead at 37. In a year and a half at the clinic, he had 6 crises. 6. And half a year before he died, they let him out with a certificate that said he was well. Most of the work you know was finished before the first attack. So no, he did not paint the way he painted because he was mad. Poor, mad, unrecognized. 3 words, 3 footnotes, and all 3 come off. Which leaves the harder question. What was a preacher's son doing with a paintbrush at all? Years before he wanted to be a painter, Vincent van Gogh already had 2 idols. A French painter of peasants and a Dutch master, dead 200 years. He picked them before he ever picked up a brush. Because until he was 27, Vincent never thought of painting at all. His whole life as a painter is 10 years, 27 to 37, and almost everything you know him for comes from the last 4. He decided to paint in 1880, but he would not call himself a painter until 1887. So, the eye came first, long before the hand, and long before the name. He was born into a decent family. upper middle class. His father was a pastor, his grandfather too, and one of his ancestors had helped found an art house called Gogh. There is a stranger fact hidden under that name. A year before the Vincent we know, another boy was born with the very same name, Vincent van Gogh. He lived a few weeks, then died. Exactly a year later, to the day, the second Vincent arrived. His mother never got over losing the first child, so she and this second Vincent were never close. His father he loved, but that warmth ran out the day Vincent chose to become a painter. Long before that, his brother and his uncle steered him into the family trade. Vincent became a dealer, buying and selling other men's pictures, and through his hands, through his eyes, passed paintings of world importance, among them Rembrandt. But he walked away. He believed the work had to be useful to people, and this was the opposite. Buy cheap from the painter, sell dear to the viewer. In that bargain, Vincent said, the artist is always the fool, and he would not sell what a rich buyer happened to like over what was truly worth it. A full wallet, he taught, is not the same as taste. But the years behind the counter left him something money could not. He had founded the masters he loved, Jean-François Millet, a French realist of the 1800s, and Rembrandt, a Dutchman from 2 centuries before. 2 men, 2 ages, nothing alike. So what did the preacher's son see in Gogh? Look at how Millet paints a peasant, not as a man bent over a field, as a god. He lifts these people up with a tenderness that is almost worship. 2 figures bow their heads at dusk. The light goes low, the work stops, and the whole field falls quiet, like the inside of a church. And here is the thing that still gets me. In the Angelus, where a basket of potatoes now sits, Millet first painted an infant. Then he painted the child out and the potatoes in. The obvious Christian scene was gone, but the prayer survived the edit. The 2 figures stand against the light, monumental, almost abstract, answering a small church on the horizon. Rembrandt comes at it from the other side. Where Millet turns a peasant into a god, Rembrandt looks at the gods and sees people. Take his Holy Family, cover the title and what is left. A man at his work, a woman feeding a child, a helper at her side. An ordinary family, gentle and modest, and nothing on the canvas tells you it is sacred. For Rembrandt, God always comes second. First he sees the man and the woman, then the sacred story. And that is what undid Vincent. 2 masters, so unlike. One raised a peasant to a god. One brought a god down to a family. But both looked at an ordinary human being and saw something holy. Vincent wanted to do exactly that, not with a brush, with a pulpit. Picture a man climbing down into a coal mine, not to dig, to preach. He rides the shaft down with the miners, into the dark, and reads them his sermons where they work. This is a failed art dealer in a poor Belgian village called Bornage, talking to people who cannot read a single word he could write. So, how does an art dealer end up underground? He left the Gogh firm behind, and he decided to try his father's road and his grandfather's road. He would become a pastor. But the proper path was slow. A theology degree took 6 years. 6 years is a long time to wait when you want to help people now, so he skipped it and took the 2-year seminary course instead. And he was ready for it. He was born into a devout family, he was a believer, and he knew the Bible the way theologians know it, in Greek and in Latin. Not the way you and I know it. He finished the year of theory. Then they sent him to Bornage for the practical work. Down there, for the first time in his life, he had to speak to people who could not read or write, and he learned something fast. You can help them with words, you can help them with your hands, but what they need most is not bread. It is a reason to keep going, something to lift them. So he started looking for where that lift could come from, and by 1880 he had an answer that would decide the rest of his life. One road to inspiration could be art. Art can raise a person. It can push him to keep growing. In his own words, I want to make pictures that touch people's souls, that lift them and make them want to keep living. But why walk away from the church at all? In the late 1870s, the mines kept exploding. Van Gogh wanted to help these men with deeds, not only words. So he wrote a petition to the town prefect, asking him to make the work underground safer. The prefect did not thank him. He received the preacher coldly, and he wrote to the seminary about him. The seminary answered that they had never liked Van Gogh as a student. Too zealous, always doing the thing nobody had asked him to do. Van Gogh had a name for men like this, Pharisees and scribes, his words, so he walked out of the course, and the teachers were glad to see him go. Faith still mattered to him deeply, but the church as an institution had discredited itself in his eyes. So he went looking for another way to preach, and that other way for Van Gogh became painting. In 1880, he called himself an amateur among professionals. He would not dare call himself an artist. An artist was someone great. Rembrandt, Caravaggio, Raphael. He had found his sermon. He had not yet discovered that he could not paint. We call him a savage of color, the wild colorist who cannot stop using it. And yet, early on, he wrote the sentence you would never guess. I am afraid of color. I do not know how to use it. Those are his words, not mine. His whole career is 10 years, only 10. And for the first 6 of them, he paints nothing you would recognize as him. Peasants. Modest, careful color. The sunflowers, the starry nights, the red vineyard, all of that lives in the last 4 years. In these first 6, that colorist is simply not there yet. Listen to how helpless he is with it. He paints a blouse red, and then he stops cold. What color do I make the skirt? He genuinely does not know. So he leaves it in sepia and hatches the rest in with a pencil. He cannot tell which colors belong beside which. And that is what he spends the first 6 years teaching himself. He never really trained. He enrolled at the Academy of Fine Arts in Amsterdam. There he drew busts of Apollos and Venuses and walked out after half a year. Self-taught, he could draw a figure and left many drawings. But perspective beat him. He never learned it. For a landscape, he worked through a perspective frame, a grid of threads he looked through to place each thing on the canvas. All of that first period comes to a head in one canvas, the Potato Eaters. This is the painting where he finally does what he set out to do, a sermon in paint, a picture meant to reach into people's souls. And it hides a second picture inside it. Look at these peasants gathered around the table and tell me what it echoes. The Last Supper. Only here the communion is not bread and wine, it is coffee and potatoes. At first glance, the picture is dark and cold, almost cruel to these poor peasants. But bring your eye close. That girl is painted against the light in country shore, and behind her you can feel steam rising off the potatoes. The food gives off warmth, so do the people. It is not a cold picture at all. Watch how the oldest man passes coffee to his wife, with a tender, almost solemn gesture. A young woman cuts the potatoes to feed her husband. This is all they have, and it is the most precious thing they own. Their table is an altar, he said, and the food is sacramental to each of them, a potato communion. Now the color itself. Damp, mold, the color of dirty, unwashed potatoes. And it does not stop at the palate. Look at their hands and their noses, shaped like the tubers they dig. These are the calloused hands of people who work the soil day and night. Working hands, yes, but also potato hands. They are flesh of the same earth. The same crop they raise in it. Then he asks himself a simple question. Could I swap this color for another? In most paintings you can. Change the color and the meaning stays put. Here it does not. Change the color and the whole mood collapses because the color is what carries the mood. That is the moment it lands on him. Color on its own means something. Through color, not just through who sits where, you can carry the feeling of a picture. maybe even its meaning. With that thought, the peasant years end. In February 1886, he had found the first law of everything he would ever paint. Move the color and you change what the picture says. Paris was about to tell him why. In the Louvre, he tipped his head back and looked straight up. A ceiling, a god driving a spear into a serpent high in the clouds. He did not know the myth. He did not need to. He could tell you, from the color alone, exactly who was winning. To understand why he was standing under that ceiling, go back a little. His brother Theo had been in Paris for years, working for the dealers Goupil, and Theo kept writing him the same thing. You have been a painter for 6 years now. If you truly mean to become a master, you have to come to Paris. Everything new is here. In February of 1886, he came. Before that, he had never stayed anywhere long. Holland, Belgium. A few crossings over to London, one town, then the next. He arrived carrying one conviction out of Holland. That color on its own means something. So in Paris, he went looking for it everywhere. He began choosing the painters who struck him, who left a mark on him. One of the first was Delacroix. And Delacroix had painted that ceiling. Apollo slays the python. A plafond, a picture made to live overhead on the ceiling of a room in the Louvre. Van Gogh could not walk past it, because in it, color is doing 3 jobs at once. It carries the light, it carries the feeling, and it carries the meaning. Look at how the meaning is carried. Apollo, up in his golden warmth, lit from inside. The serpent below him in cold, dark shades, already falling. You do not need a single line of the story. Good is warm and bright. Evil is cold and low. The color tells you before the picture does. But Delacroix belonged to the past. Van Gogh turned to the living ones. The Impressionists, Manet, Renoir, Degas. From them he took 2 things. The palette caught fire, brighter and fuller and free. The brushstroke came out of hiding. Classical painting was laid down in tiny seamless strokes you were never meant to notice. These men left it open and thick, so you can watch how fast the hand moved, how the paint went on. You can see the temperament in it. And the subjects change with it. No more Bible, no more ancient myth, just a bridge over the river, the city as it actually looked. Somewhere in these Paris years, the color turns loud in a way it never had before. For the first time, the canvas starts to look like him. Then there were the pointillists, the neo-impressionists. Their rule was strict. You build the whole picture out of separate dots of pure color. Van Gogh tried it, but where they filled the whole canvas with dots, he did only half. He had spotted the cost. Paint everything in dots and the picture goes flat, every object losing its weight, its own body. So he mixed the two. Dots in some places, open strokes in others, a different touch for cloth than for a wooden chair. So each thing kept its texture and stayed itself. But the pointillists handed him something he would keep for life. A law of color. There are 3 primaries, yellow and red and blue, and every other color is born from mixing them, and each one has a single partner that makes it burn. Put red beside green and both go hotter, yellow with violet, blue with orange. This is the law of contrasting complementary colors, and Van Gogh found it in print, understood it, and would use it again and again. So look at what Paris had done. Color could now carry light, feeling, and meaning all at once. His whole grammar in place. But the stack of prints from the far side of the world was waiting in a shop nearby, and it was about to break his last European habit. He and his brother Theo collected Japanese woodblock prints. Their collection came to around 500 of them. 500. And these prints were about to break the last European habit Vincent had left. Look at what caught his eye first. The frame cuts the scene like a snapshot, a woman in a heavy kimono, and the picture simply ends. Mid-story, mid-gesture. The tail runs on past the paper's edge. Then the color, Pure yellow, pure red. No soft fade between them. Just the hard line, a contour, splitting one color from the next. European painting had trained his eye to blend, to shade, to model in halftones. Here, none of that, and the flatness it makes is not a weakness. It is the loudest the picture can be. And there is no background here at all. In a Japanese print, nothing hangs behind anything else. It is one single plane, and every part of it fights for your eye on equal terms. Look again at the geisha. Is she the subject, or the birds, or the flowers crowding the edge of the sheet? You honestly cannot say. Each one steps forward and claims to be the point. Vincent takes all of this and pours it straight into his own European paintings. Start with the man who sold him his paint. Pasha Tanji dealt colors to artists, but he was a collector too. He kept the modern masters and Japanese prints. So Vincent paints him sitting inside his own collection, walled in by prints. And that wall behind him refuses to stay behind. The prints crowd forward, as bright and as present as Tanguy's own face. The single plane carried straight over from Japan. Then look at the smock, blue, ringed with a hard orange line, buttoned with orange dots. Blue against orange. The law of complementary colors out of Paris doing its quiet work. Now a second portrait, and a better story. A doctor named Ray once treated Vincent. Vincent had no money to pay him, so he did the one thing he could. He painted the man, and he wrapped the doctor in a background that will not sit still. A green and red pattern swirls behind him, and your eye chases the curls of it instead of the face. That was on purpose. In Japan, a bright pattern ground like that was kept for emperors and philosophers. It was Vincent's way of telling the doctor one thing: I honor you. And he did one more thing to the picture. He quietly turned the Frenchman Japanese. The face narrowed. The eyes shrank and slanted. The little beard stopped being French. A gift painted in the language he had only just learned. Dr. Ray looked at it, thanked Vincent, and did not recognize himself. So he stashed it in the attic. By pure accident, that is how it survived. The other doctors did not understand their portraits either. One handed his down to his children, who used it for target practice with darts. Ray went one better. He used this portrait to plug a hole in a shed. Then Vincent died. Collectors came hunting for anything he had touched, and Ray admitted he did not really need the thing, so he let it go. A man named Morozov bought it, and that shed patch now hangs in a museum in Moscow. So what did 500 prints actually teach him? This. The Japanese masters painted the sky red, not the sky they saw, but the sky as it truly burns at dawn and at dusk. Push the color past the fact and you land closer to the truth of the moment. Vincent understood. You do not have to paint what sits in front of you. Exaggerate the color, simplify the shape, and you catch the feeling instead of the copy. Painting had stopped being realism. Photography can do the copy now. What paint does is emotion, an idea, a mood. Paint the feeling, not the fact. He now had every lesson Paris could give. One last picture remained to prove he had taken it all in. One field, high noon, no shadows, no story, no perspective, and you still feel the heat come off it. This is the harvest, out on the plain of Lacroix, and it is his exam. Everything he had studied laid down on one canvas to prove he had taken it all in. Now look at how it is built. There is no European perspective here, no tonal perspective either, no air thickening as the land runs back. The far field is drawn with a hard, clear line of contour, the very line European painting says must soften and dissolve into the distance. His refuses to, and it still works. The picture is bright, it is loud, it is alive. Look at it and you can name the time of day and the season it was painted in. So, read it. Midday, because nothing casts a shadow anywhere in the field. The end of summer, because they are bringing in the harvest. Heat, the flat, heavy kind that makes you thirsty just looking. No shadow, no narrative, and still the whole hot afternoon sits there on the canvas. That is the first key, color. Now the second key, and that is hiding in the paint itself. Come closer. The brushstroke changes all across the canvas. Think of the Impressionists. With them, one stroke, the same touch everywhere, edge to edge. With him, it is different in every single patch of the picture. He changes it for a reason. Each thing gets the stroke. That is its nature. He wants the fence to look like a fence, the earth to look like earth. So the fence is a thin, long, sharp stroke, and you can almost feel the prick of the split wooden edge. The cabbages beside it, a wide and soft stroke. Every object, its own character, carried by the character of the mark. So here they are, two keys, and they never fail him, no matter the period, no matter the canvas. You ask the same two things, what the color is doing, what the stroke is doing. Do that, and the picture tells you the state it is holding. And sometimes, if you are honest, it tells you the state you are standing there in. And that stroke is not a figure of speech. It physically stands up off the canvas. He worked in impasto, laying the paint on thick. Then he dragged it with the wooden end of the brush, or with a bare finger, until ridges rose along the edges. That is a picture built in 3 dimensions. In Amsterdam, they took one of his brush strokes and cast it in plastic big enough to touch. You can run your finger right along the ridge he dragged. It is not only for children. With the painter who painted this physically, the feel under your finger tells you something your eye alone will miss. 2 keys now open any canvas he ever made, the character of the color and the character of the stroke. And in 1887, the way Vincent felt about himself and about his own painting was starting to change. In 1887, something shifts in how Vincent sees himself and how he sees his own painting. He starts, slowly, to call himself a painter, and he begins to do a thing he will not stop doing. He paints his own face again and again. Partly it was money. Models cost money he did not have, and his own face was always in front of him for free. But that is not the real reason he did it. He had worked something out. The best subject he had to study, really study, was himself. And there is a fight in it. In his own words, I want to argue with photography. Photography, he says, cannot do the thing a painter can do in paint. Think about what a photograph gives you. Accuracy, the real thing, the exact likeness of a face down to the pore. But all of that is the outside. What Van Gogh wants on the canvas is his own relation to that face. The inside, the mood, the person behind the face. So look at him, the gray felt hat, the reddish beard, the blue strokes behind his head. Read the man in it. There is will, there is energy, and under it, something nervous and shut, held tight. Now the eyes. He is not looking at you. He looks past you, over you, and inward down into himself. A black and white photograph from those years could never have held that look. Come closer to the paint. The strokes do not lie flat. They spread out from the eyes in concentric rings, circle after circle, and the center of the whole picture is the eyes. The eyes, he says, the mirror of the soul. Stand in front of this canvas in Amsterdam and something strange happens. The rings turn into a funnel. The eyes pull at you. You lean in and you go under. The way your whole head goes under water. A photograph cannot really pass that on. The painting takes you down into his world, his cosmos. And watch where the force goes. Concentric rays come out of the eyes, and they do not stop at the man's outline. They push past his edge like an emanation. He is telling you that the whole world in the picture grows outward from inside him. It is set by his state, his own mood, not the other way round. From this face on, every canvas he paints is really a self-portrait. And in 1887, that state is not the broken man of the legend. It is tense, and it is creative. A man full of force, thinking hard about himself and about the work he is about to make. 1 year on, he paints himself again, standing at his easel. And this time he does something deliberate. He puts his signature in the middle of the canvas. Vincent, 88, dead center. He's cashing it in. He's a painter now, a professional, not an amateur. Then look at the palette in his hand. Those are pure colors, laid out bright and unmixed. And they are the very colors his own face is painted with. The palette is a promise. This is the painting he means to make from here on. So in 1888, he decides he will leave for Arles in the south. He will build a studio of the south and call other painters down to it to make the new art together side by side. And listen to how he described the self-portrait. He wrote that he had conceived it as the image of a bonze, a worshipper of the eternal Buddha. A bonze is a servant in the temple, living plainly, thinking only of what he serves. He signs one canvas, Vincent 88, and calls himself a monk of paint. Then he leaves for the south to build a monastery for painters. He does not rent a room. He rents the whole house, the yellow one on the corner in Arles. The upstairs he cuts into little cells, one bed to a room, monk's cells for the painters he is certain will come. The ground floor he keeps open for the studios, a whole house waiting to be filled. To fit it out, he lives for months on coffee and a crust of bread. Every franc he has goes one of two ways, into brushes and paint or into rebuilding the house for men who are not there yet. He dreams of a colony of painters. Of all of them, exactly one ever walks through the door, Gogh. 1. Then he paints the room he sleeps in. Look at it. Everything he owns and nothing he does not. A narrow bed, 2 chairs, a jug and a basin. It is all set out in pairs, neat and easy on the eye. There is a plain comfort here. This is the whole face of a man who needs almost nothing to live. Now look at the window. The shutters are shut. His world is a closed one, and into it he lets only the people he chooses to let in. You are standing in a room that keeps its own door, and you are here because he opened it. One thing rules the picture: the bed. It sits near the center like a queen and takes your eye before anything else can. In every strong Van Gogh, there is one object that organizes the whole image and carries the meaning. In this room, it is that bed. Hold that idea. It is about to matter. So run his own rule on it. The bed is yellow ochre. By his law of complementary colors, the color that should balance it is violet. But look at the walls. They are not violet. They are blue. He wrote the rule, and here, on his own wall, the rule is broken. So either he forgot his own law, or something happened to the paint. Here's what happens. The walls were violet once. Violet is 2 pigments mixed, a blue and a red, and the red he reached for was a cheap one. Under years of daylight, that red simply burned off. The blue stayed behind. The violet you can no longer see was there the whole time. And you can walk up and check it. Where the frame sat over the canvas, a thin strip of cloth was shaded from the light. When restorers lifted the frame away, that strip was still violet, unfaded. The proof was hiding under the edge, for anyone who takes the frame off and looks. And it is not only this room. Some of his irises have turned blue the same way, though he set them as violet against the yellow field. The sunflowers in London and Amsterdam are worse. The gold is failing and the flowers are going a brown, swampy color that was never his. None of it comes back. The only way to save one of these canvases is to take it off the wall and lock it in the dark. You keep it away from the light that is eating it. He hums sunflowers to fill his own room. To him, a sunflower is the sun itself, the god of life, the source that everything living feeds on. Now look closely into the vase. He paints every age of the flower at once. Young buds, blooms in full petal, and old heads. Those old heads have dropped their petals and gone to seed. So a plain vase of flowers is really the whole arc of a life. Birth, ripeness, dying, all standing in one frame. And to him the dying is not the end of it. The old flower spills its seed. A person goes on in his ideas, in his work, in what he leaves for the ones who come after. His color was a system so exact that a cheap pigment breaks a law you can still walk up and check, and he could already tell a whole human life with a single vase of flowers. He almost never painted his own shoes. He painted the peasants. There are several of them, several pairs of the same tired boots, and not one of them is his. A worn pair of boots, he understood, is the portrait of a whole life. Look at the leather, the cracks, the slack laces, the shape a foot beat into them over years. You do not need the man standing there. The roads were rough, the walk was long and hard, and the boots say so without a face. And that painted pair was possibly something more, not just leather, but an invitation to walk the road with him further out. In the end, Gauguin took it up and came. He was a man of words before he was a man of paint. He described his own pictures in letters so vividly that you could grasp them without ever seeing the canvas. So it should not surprise you that he did not begin from paint, or even from an image. He began from an idea. He wrote to Deo, "I have spent a month now looking for the subject to carry my idea." A month. The finished paintings look instant, thrown down wet in a single sitting. But the search takes weeks because the subject does not come first, the idea comes first. And he paints the way a writer writes. Understatement, hyperbole, the loaded epithet, the moves of prose, only carried in color instead of words. Hold on to that, because his next picture is an argument, not a photograph. Here is the sower. One man striding across a violet field, casting seed toward you. If he wanted realism, he would have painted many sowers, a whole crew working the fields of France. He paints one. So this one is not a person, he is all of them. And the color gives it away. Nothing here is the color it should be. The sower is flesh of the sun and blood of the young shoots. The same burning yellow runs through the man, the sun, and the field. That giant sun is not the hour of the day. It is life itself, raw energy, everything lit from the inside. Now look at the ground. He is still sowing, but the shoots are already up behind him. The gap between the act and the harvest is simply gone. He works like a prophet, and what he does bears fruit at once. Many people read the sower as Van Gogh himself. A sower of truth, they said, who would renew our tired art, and maybe our tired industrial world along with it. Perhaps it was him. And you can feel why they saw it. Now, the same subject again. Same man, same field, same seed in the hand. But this figure stoops. He is beaten down and you feel it. The work has gone mechanical. No shoots behind him, no harvest, no reason. Nobody needs what he's doing. Same subject, painted twice. One version about life, the other about death. He did not change the man, or the field, or the seed in his hand. He changed the color. That was the whole discovery. And behind the first sower, the living one, that sun sits like a halo. He put it there on purpose. A saint's ring of gold welded onto a man alone in a field. He wrote down exactly what he was after. I would like to paint men and women, he said, with something of the eternal, the thing the halo once stood for. The halo belongs to religious painting, where every subject is about the eternal. He wanted to carry that into ordinary people, in ordinary fields. You have walked past the crucifixion and thought, right, a crucifixion, and moved on. The old sacred images went dead on us. We stopped hearing what they were about, even the fierce ones by Rembrandt, even by Caravaggio. So he set out to write new scripture, the same eternity, but in a plain language a peasant or a miner could read without a priest to explain it. He wanted to reach their souls, not the drawing rooms of the rich. Art open to everyone, still carrying the weight the old sacred pictures once carried. Change only the color, and the same sower turns from a prophet into a tired man with nothing behind him. He had a grammar now, and he wanted to write scripture with it. One painting sold while he was alive. Only one, or so the story goes, and this is it. The Red Vineyard. Stand back from it and it stops being a field. It is a fire. The far edge is where the fire catches a spark in the dark. The metal is the flame, the whole of autumn burning at once. And the front, closest to you, is ash. Everything here has already burned. Now find the thing that holds it all together. It is the sun. Every line bends toward it. The rays spread out in rings. They pull in the horizon, and they pull in the wet road after rain, which runs like slow lava. And once you see the circle, you cannot stop seeing it. The wheel, the umbrella, the ox of the bent backs, the grapes, all of nature bowing to one turning cycle. And the man is inside that circle too. Van Gogh says it plainly. He is here. He is part of nature. The peasant is closest of all, because he lives by the same turning. Watch the vineyard. It flowers, it dies, it gives grapes. The grapes give wine. The wine becomes communion. So a human life does not simply stop. It keeps going in the work it leaves behind. That is why his reaper is never only a reaper. He cuts the wheat in bright sun, and Van Gogh means us. Mankind is the wheat that gets reaped. It sounds like death, and it is death. But there is nothing here to mourn. We burn down with nature toward winter, the way a field burns down, so that we come back again in spring. So, hold on to that, the warm way of dying the good death with nothing sad in it, because he painted 2 more nights and they will not agree with this one, or with each other. He made 2 cafes in Arles, one from the outside, one from the outside, one from the inside. Look at the first one. The cafe terrace at night. It looks warm. It feels like rest and calm. Now do this with me. Lay your hand flat over the golden light of the cafe and cover it. What is left is a cold street, under a sky that is really open space. Van Gogh finds the emptiest, coldest blue there is. And you feel it. Your own loneliness on a planet, even with family and friends somewhere behind you. Now lift your hand. The gold comes pouring back out of the cafe, and you lean toward it. Friendship is in there. Love, maybe. Understanding, warmth, and quiet. A summer night you want to walk straight into, sit down in, and stay. That pull is real. Every bit of it is real. So step inside. Friendship, love, warmth, calm, all of that in here. Not at all. Not about this at all. It is frightening. Remember the floorboards in his bedroom laid down in calm, even lines. Here, the boards charge forward like horses. They drag you in with them deep into the room, and they do not let go. Everything is on fire. Everything blazes. And here are his own words for the place. A den, a trap. Somewhere a man can easily lose his mind or commit a crime. That is Vincent, quoted exactly. He builds those furious passions from 3 colors that fight. Red, green, a sick ailing yellow. They collide and they never settle. Ask who the main character is here. Not a person. It is the billiard table, dead in the center, shaped like a sarcophagus, like a coffin. And the objects are more alive than the people. The chairs stand crooked and skewed, about to break into a dance. The people sit like sleepwalkers. Even side by side, they do not speak. Nothing connects. And above all of it hangs one truly black eye, the clock. It counts off the minutes of a human life. Vanity of vanities. He called that last cafe a place where you could go mad or commit a crime. And into that winter, at last, walked the one painter who had answered his letter. The painter he had been begging for finally arrived. Van Gogh wanted a friend, an equal, someone to think and argue about art with, side by side. Paul Gauguin walked in as a teacher with a pupil in front of him. That mismatch is where everything that follows begins. At first, it worked. They set up their easels beside each other and painted the same things: the grape harvest at Arles, the red vineyard, 2 men, 1 motif, 2 hands. But they were built differently. Different temperaments, different ideas of what a painting was even for. Put 2 men like that under one roof through a winter, and the room gets smaller every day. And there was something Van Gogh could not get past. Gauguin had a wife and children, and he had left them. To survive, his wife had gone to her mother in Denmark. That kind of walking away disturbed Van Gogh, maybe more than he ever let on. So Van Gogh did a strange thing. He painted 2 empty chairs, his own and Gauguin's. No faces, no hands. But look closely, because these are portraits. One of himself, one of the man living across the hall. His own chair is plain. A simple wooden seat, nothing on it he did not need. He paints it in full daylight, in bright color, wide open. This is the man he wanted to be seen as, someone who could open the door and let you in. He was not that man. You have watched him stay shut all the way through this story, but that is how he paints himself here, in daylight, holding nothing back. Now Gauguin's chair. An armchair in the dusk under 2 sources of light that answer each other. It sits there pleased with itself, chin up, nose in the air. Something with pretensions. And it turns its back to you. The high back stands between you and the seat, blocking the way in. Gauguin did not let just anyone close to him. He stayed a dark horse, shut, even to Van Gogh himself. Then came the 23rd of December. The last quarrel. Gauguin told him he was leaving. First for Paris to sell his paintings, and then far away to Tahiti. Something in Van Gogh broke. In the fit that followed, to drown the pain of being left, he cut off the lobe of his own ear. Then he carried it to a woman he knew at the house down the street and handed it to her. A few days later, the local paper ran a short notice about it. Gauguin, who had gone off to a cafe and then out for the night, came back to find him unconscious in bloody sheets. He packed his things and left. No goodbye, he never answered another letter. That was the end of the 2 of them. After that night, the seizures started. Epilepsy. Crises that came and went, and when they came they held him anywhere from a week and a half to 2 months. And in those stretches he could not paint. For a painter, that was a painful part. 2 months at a time with the one thing he lived for taken out of his hands. He went into hospital, first in Arles, then to a monastery hospital at Saint-Rémy-de-Provence, where he spent a year, and through all of it he kept painting. The work does not fall apart. Look at it and you cannot point to the illness. One thing does change back. Under Gauguin, he had drifted into ochres and brick reds. With Gauguin gone, Van Gogh returns to his own colors: blue, yellow, green. And then he paints the night. Until now, he had always given most of the canvas to the earth and left the sky a thin strip, just enough for the sun. Here, for the first time, the sky takes the main role. The swirling light up there is the real life, ecstatic and alive. The ground below is only its pale reflection. A single cypress rises through it like a flame, the old sign of death, of the crossing from the earth up into the sky. To know why he painted the stars that way, you need the last key, his letters. I once handed my students a letter Vincent wrote. It was about death, about sickness, as a train you take up to the stars, the way you take a train to the next town. Read it, I told them. Imagine a friend just sent you this. Every one of them saw the same thing, a dying man, a cry for help. Here is what none of them guessed. He wrote that letter in 1888, before the breakdown. His brother had just written that Paul Gauguin was coming soon, and this was Vincent's reply to the good news. He was sitting up at night looking at the stars and the thought simply arrived. He wrote it down for Theo. He wrote about death, not because he wanted it, but because he could not stop thinking about it. About life. About death. About death. So here is the strange part. Every student saw a goodbye because we already know how the story ends. We look at his stars and say, well, of course, here he is grieving. We read ending backward into everything he touched. Without the letter, you could never guess it. That the man watching the sky over the Rhone was thinking of sickness as a way to travel toward death. This is the third key. The stroke and the color were the first two, the ones you can read freely. The letters are the third, and only they carry the idea behind the paint. And the letters teach you one hard thing. What matters is not what he meant to say, it is what he said in the end. Those can be two completely different sentences. So look again at the last paintings. 1889, 1890. You want death in them, and there is none. These are landscapes of full life, seen as precisely as anything he made in 87, before the seizures ever began. There is one exception, and you feel it before you can explain it. Wheatfield with crows. The road breaks off, maybe a line of life cut short. Black crows fly low. The sky is blue-black. The wheat twists like snakes. Every shape in it is an ending. And here, for once, the letter agrees with the paint. He wrote it plainly. Broad stretches of wheat under a troubled sky. He no longer had to search for a subject to carry his sadness and his full loneliness. He had found it. His very last canvas he never finished. Tree roots, possibly painted the day before he died. Twisted trunks flattened into pure color. The young Pablo Picasso is already in it. The young Henri Matisse, 10-15 years before either of them arrived. Then he walked into a wheat field with a gun. He aimed at his own heart. He told Theo he had missed again, the way he had missed so often in his life. The bullet went into his belly instead. The agony began near midnight on the 28th of July. Early on the 29th, 1890, he was gone. Theo could not survive it. The syphilis he already carried turned fast, and within 6 months his brother was gone too. Then a widow named Jo took everything that was left. Every canvas, every letter. Her son carried it on. We owe them the museum. We owe them the letters translated until the third key would fit anyone's hand. So go back to where we started. You were told the swirls were madness, the work of a sick man who did not know what he was doing. Look again with the three keys. The color is chosen. The stroke is chosen. And in his letters he hands you the idea behind both. Every canvas he made is a portrait of a state, his own or a field's or a friend's. Real painters, he said, do not paint things as they are. They paint them because they feel themselves to be those things. That is what he actually said, and now you can read it off the paint yourself. He was not a madman who happened to paint. He was a man who found the one thing that let him say everything he could never say from a pulpit or a shop counter. And he counted himself lucky to hold the brush. He gave up one frontier after another and kept the painting. A happy man, he said, because at last he could become himself. He knew we would understand him only later. If he never saw, he wrote, what is there left to thresh? He worked for a future he would not see. He worked for us. He sowed, we thresh. The starry night on your mug is not a scream. It is a letter, and it is addressed to you. And if this is your kind of thing, subscribe.